Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk, this Monday edition. We've got Share-a-thon coming up April 8, 9, and 10. We'd love to be able to use your AFR Talk listener story if you've been impacted in some way by Focal Point, what you've heard on this program. We'd love to hear about it. We might use your story during Share-a-thon. The number to call to record your story, 877-876-8893. That'll give you a direct line. You can record your story, 877-876-8893. 8893. If Focal Point or any of our other AFR Talk programs, if God's used it in your life, it's motivated you to become engaged in the culture war, helped you to grow as a Christian, we would love to know about it. 877-876-8893. Might use your story during Share-a-thon. Give them a call right now, 877-876-8893. Well, let's go to the phones before we go back to some sound bites. 888-589-8840. Let's go to Mac, Albany, Georgia. Mac, welcome. What's on your mind?
Thank you for taking my call, Brian. How you?
Yes, sir. Good. How are you?
I was just listening to Mark that was just talking to you about the election in Florida.
Yeah.
That just shows you how ignorant some Republicans are. I mean, it really makes us look ridiculous the way they try to ridicule him.
Yeah.
It kind of makes me feel like on MSNBC last week, they even put Joe Biden in with Roger Dangerfield. That was on NBC. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you, brother. Keep up the good work.
All right. I appreciate it, Mac. And the reality is we talked about this last week. We played that soundbite from Chris Matthews, and he thinks like these liberals think, whether they will admit it or not. He said, look, the reason that Democrats are losing elections is because we can understand the complexity of modern issues. And those poor, benighted Republicans, they're just coming out of fighting alligators in the swamps. They don't have two brain cells to rub together. They're dumb as a fence post. So we're just too smart for them. We understand the nuances of all these very sophisticated political problems, and these poor Republican rubes don't. And so how do we compete against that kind of stupidity, that kind of ignorance? And I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, that is how the left looks at you and me. And these Republican elites that Mark Levin was talking about that got all over David Jolly, they're thinking of David Jolly the same way because that guy's pro-life and pro-marriage. He is for border security. He's against amnesty. He's one of us on those issues. I'm not saying he's one of us all the way down the line, but he's one of us on those major issues. And so the GOP elites think of him as this rube, so they weren't going to give him any help, just like they didn't give Todd Akin any help or Richard Murdoch any help. They're just going to let him twist in the wind, and then he surprises them all by winning. And now all of a sudden everyone wants to claim him as their own. All right, let's go to Frank in Victoria, Texas. Frank, Victoria, Texas. Welcome to Focal Point. Frank, what's on your mind?
Hello, sir. First-time caller.
Hey, well, great. Thanks for calling in.
I just wanted to tell you, sir, that I used to be a hardcore atheist.
Really?
I used to be, yes.
So what changed you from...
Listening to your show all this time, I realized like a lot of your morals and your principles were mine.
Wow.
And then I realized that they're not just yours, they're God's. And I studied into more, and I listened to you more. I listened to AFR, and sir, I want to thank you and keep pushing to help us fight against this gay agenda, against the practices of Obama. Thank you, sir.
All right, Frank.
You brought God into my life, sir.
Well, Al, praise God for that, and to God be the glory for that. And Frank, I can't tell you how much it means to me and how much it means to our team to, have you call in and share that story, because that's what this is all about. That's why we do what we do, is we care about people like you. We want to see this nation come back to God, and the way that happens is one heart at a time. So praise God for that, Frank, and I can't thank you enough for calling in to kind of give us your story, and just God bless you and protect you and use you for his kingdom. And, I wonder, Frank, if maybe your story shared by a lot of people, they're more conservative than they realize. When they start hearing somebody articulate conservative values, there may be a lot of people out there saying, I think I agree with that guy. I think that guy might have a point. And they may actually be more conservative than they realize, because all they've heard are these loud, cacophonous voices in the mainstream media. Do you think that's possible?
Yes, sir. I believe so too, sir.
All right, Frank. Well, listen, appreciate your call. Thank you very much for that. Frank in Victoria, Texas. you know, an atheist before he got hold of AFR Talk and Focal Point in particular. Praise God for that. What a great story. Jeff, let me bring you in just for a second. We were talking about that Boston Gay Pride Parade, and, you know, I made the point that the Supreme Court had ruled 9-0, I mean 9-0, that if the Boston Gay Pride organizers didn't want to have homosexual groups marching in their parades and carrying their banners, they didn't have to. And you made an interesting observation over the break.
Well, I was just wondering what's the difference between a court ruling in favor of the parade organizers, and what's the difference between that and somebody baking a cake for a gay wedding? Well,
you know, that's an exceptionally good question, because the basis on which the parade organizers won their case was citing the First Amendment's protection for the freedom of association. You know, as long as your purpose of your assembly is peaceable, you have the right to peaceably assemble. And it's not any bit of the government's business what you're doing or who you have to associate with or who you have to include in your group. And so, again, I think that's a great question, Jeff. If the Supreme Court ruled 9-0 that parade organizers have the right to associate with whom they want, then a baker should certainly have exactly the same constitutional right. All right, thank you, Jeff. That's a great observation. Well, let's get a couple of clips on this Florida race, 888-589-8840 if you want to call, sneak in a call before the end of the hour. Let's go to clip 3, Rob, if we can. This is Dan Pfeiffer, spokesman for President Obama. And again, the Democrats are whistling past the graveyard on this Florida race because David Jolly made this race about Obamacare. That race was a referendum on Obamacare. Everybody understood it. Everybody knew it. And Obamacare lost. Now, here's Dan Pfeiffer. They're in panic mode. Democrats, full-fledged panic mode. Got a column in the stack by Maureen Dowd, New York Times. I mean, she says 2, 3, 4 times in that piece, Democrats are in full-fledged panic mode, and a lot of it's because of the special election results in Florida. Here's Dan Pfeiffer trying to put a spin on it.
Well, David, that's not true. The Republican position on Obamacare of repeal at all costs is opposed by a majority of Americans. It was not a factor in the Florida 13 election, but don't take my word for it. Jeff Guerin, who is the pollster in that race, who's the partner of NBC's own Peter Hart, said it was a negligible effect. Karl Rove, someone I don't agree with often.
Jeff Guerin, just since you brought him up, Jeff Guerin also told us, because we've looked at his comments, there is no question that Obamacare is a huge motivator for Republicans, and turning out the vote, which they did very effectively in Florida 13, much more so than Democrats, could become a national trend.
Well, Democrats have to do a better job of turning out in midterm elections. We're very good at presidential years and less good at midterms. And if more Democrats don't turn out, we will not do well. That's incumbent of all of us, the president included, to get as many people to the polls in November as possible.
Yeah, it's interesting. David Gregory actually doing a little bit of journalism here, because Dan Pfeiffer trying to say, look, it was not a factor in the Florida 13 election. That's just lunacy to say that. And he cites this guy with the name of Jeff Guerin. I didn't read the piece, but David Gregory says, hey, I read the same piece, and it says that Obamacare was influential. It was significant. It was a key motivator for Republican turnout, and Pfeiffer then has to retreat and says, yeah, we got a turnout problem and all that. Now, Katrina vanden Heuvel, this is clip number 4. She is hardcore leftist, and, when you're in panic mode, it's kind of fight or flight. You either run like a scalded dog from Obamacare, or you take your stand and start swinging from the hips, and that's what Katrina vanden Heuvel thinks the Democrats need to do. Let's listen.
I think any party needs to turn out its core voters, and I think the Democrats need to think very hard, and they are thinking hard about how you go on the offense around not only Obamacare, but an economic agenda. Repeal is not a policy. Repeal provides no economic security for anyone. So I think the Democrats need to go on the offense, explain how the Republican Party wants to repeal health care, which is a right, wants to take back those policies that would prevent discrimination against women, against people who have pre-existing conditions, and then lay out a robust economic agenda, minimum wage, better jobs, which are being obstructed by Republicans in Congress, pre-K, all kinds of things that will turn out core voters.
So she's basically admitting, look, the base isn't turning out. Base is staying home. They're defeated. This Obamacare thing is an anvil. It's an anchor around the neck of Democrat candidates. And so she thinks the Democrat Party has got to go on offense. Well, you're going to go on offense. You got to have something to go on offense with. You've got to have a playbook. You've got to have a strategy. You've got to have some plays you can run. And the Democrats have nothing. They've got nothing in the bag. Let's go to Holton in Crosby, Texas. Holton, welcome to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. What's on your mind?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I'm glad to listen to your program. I listen to y'all quite a bit. The first comment I have is about the Democrats and Republicans.
Yes, sir.
For lack of better words, none of them have any brass, but especially our Republican, quote, leaders.
Well, and I think that's what Mark Levin was complaining about. We just don't have any courageous, convictional leadership in the Republican Party, and a lot of people are frustrated with that.
No spines. However, I have another comment.
Yes, sir.
I have been listening to your show and several others. I drive a lot and listen to the radio. And what's going on today with the gays and the atheists and everybody that's attacking believers?
Well,
and I think we've been so blessed in the United States of America, and it's just finally rolling downhill to us. It says in the Word that we are going to be hated and we are going to be persecuted, and there's Christians, quote, believers dying all over the world today, and we're just being blessed enough right now just that we aren't dying for it yet, but it's coming.
All right, Holton, listen, I agree with you, and that's the concern we've got. We want to try to stand up against that tide before it does swamp our entire culture and wipe out every good thing that God has done in the history of this country. But do not forget, with God's help, we are, in fact, fighting a winnable war. We'll see you tomorrow.